My name is Tarek. Welcome to Thorin's YouTube channel.
One of the things I found very weird about the period after the major was, if you remember, everyone hoped, right, it's just that one Astralis match, you know, it's a mixture of like player break, the vertigo pick. Obviously, by the way, they did like do some epic shit. You saw like each round after that, they just get better and better, and then they won the major. So, you know, that all made it in theory sort of okay to lose. But what had to happen then for me was, and it almost did, obviously, you had to come back and you had to like win New York, beat them there. And if that had happened, you know, it could have just been a really interesting back and forth era. But obviously, as people will know, they primarily took over again, then became number one. EG obviously was going against them a bit, but famously you guys lost all the matches to them. But also the more disturbing thing to me was, even though the team was that you were still making loads of semis and final, the team just, again, it's like 2018 again, it's like even being really good, you never won the events though. What do you think? Was there some sense in the team of like something's holding us back, or something's gone wrong here? Because like I say, it wasn't like the team just flatlined immediately. People forget that was months and months later. Like you were still right in the mix. It's just that this time you were never winning the championship.
Yeah, exactly. I think after Berlin, we made two finals in a row. If I believe we made IEM New York 2019. Did we make it? No, we lost in semis. We lost in semis to Charles.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
Yeah, and then after that, we made the finals of ECS. I don't remember again what happened there, but yeah, I mean, like we came close. I mean, if we were on opposite sides of the bracket, we would have been in the final of New York, and it would have been a great final. I mean, once again to play Charles, but. Yeah, I mean, I think our confidence is starting getting lowered. Obviously, you go from winning, expectations are very high from the community, from the players themselves, and you're not winning events anymore, and you're trying to figure out the solution. And I think, as a team, we never figured out the right solution. We never try to take a better approach to the game. I think people's initial reactions were roster changes, if I believe correctly. I mean, people wanted to make changes already in the team. And
that seems a bit wild considering how close you still are to. I know there's the whole player break mentally, but like you're still pretty close to the fucking Grand Slam at this point in time. People chop and change.
I think it's around Malmo. Malmo was a terrible event. I mean, that was Malmo was like, I guess, considered the death of Team Liquid. Honestly, that was. We lost the Greyhound at that event.
I will say that was another event, just like with ECS later, where it was like mere days after an event in America, and you had to like fly straight there because you have the same thing, if you remember. Yeah,
actually, I mean, you're right, but either way, you know, there's
still a terrible result, of course.
It's a really bad result, and I believe that's the event where people.
So that's the joke. It's like, so essentially, your joke is that's the punchline. It's like, yeah, but we lost to Greyhound. That's why they were like, we've got to make roster moves now, right? You know, this isn't good enough. Like, fucking hell, all right. I know Greyhound weren't great, but fucking hell.
Yeah.
You're not allowed to lose, ever. Okay.
Yeah.
I've got a question for you, right? When you actually played the CSL New York match you're talking about, I actually remember this was the one where in one of the maps was Dust 2, and you had an epic performance. You had like 30 kills or something against Astralis. You had a really big game. Right? I want to ask you a question, right? You might not remember, so if you do, I can refresh you. Right? I actually DM'd you after this game, and essentially what I said to you, because I was trying to, like, I always try to find some angle where, you don't have to, like, one thing I hate is you never blow smoke up people's arse. Like, you never tell them, like, great game, even if they lost, like, you know, in a heartbreaking fashion, because They know it's sort of not, and in a way it's not cool that we all have to pretend like, get him next time. So what I said instead was, because I thought this is a cool angle to take, was I just said, like, you have to sort of be like thankful to be part of such an epic performance as that, though, and to be able to have a map like that, right? Do you remember what you told me?
I actually read this message recently, but I can't.
It's a pretty good answer. Basically, the gist of it was you just sort of told me, like, yeah, but it doesn't really matter if you lose the game, right? It was just sort of along those lines.
I mean, that's probably the answer I'd always give. I don't think my.
But you get my point though. Like, on the one hand, like there is a world in which, look, it is amazing to be in a position where you go against one of the best teams ever, maybe the best team ever, and you can have a pop off game and dominate and all. But at the same time, yeah, like ultimately, at this point in your career, it has to be about the trophy.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, when you're winning before, you know, it's like when you're that rookie player like in 2017 and you have a great performance. That's like something you can be happy about, because at the time your team doesn't have the expectations to win. It changes very fast though once trophies start getting lifted. Then your expectations are always to win. Like in your mind, there should not be a situation where you're not playing this final for the trophy. And I mean, exactly it. I mean, it's always the same mindset. It's been my mindset for all of 2021 pretty much. Even with the numerous FaZe rosters, I always believed that we had the ability to win trophies, and we just never, you know, got across the line or made the right progression. And yeah, I mean, during that time in Liquid, I think that's what was killing the team. Actually, was the lack of finals appearances eventually, and then some inner team drama, which is very North American-esque. And I mean, that's just the fall of Team Liquid summed up, I think.
Right, one reason why you noticed earlier when I said that stats-wise, people might think you think of like 2019 as one of the best years of your career, because obviously the team was awesome, and actually during the summer you also had great stats, everything was brilliant, right? The reason why I actually reserved a bit of judgment there is I know that you aren't a fan of what happened during this time period though, where basically this was the period where not only was the team not winning, but because your stats numbers went down. I will say they were very uniquely down, as in it wasn't like the stats were you just doing terribly. It was more like it looked like you were never seeing any action, if you know what I mean. Like the deaths went down, but so did the kills, and it's like just the raw numbers went down.
Everything went down. Impact.
I know this was but I know this was a period though where again you tried to, I wouldn't say like argue with me, but you were trying to like make a case to me that it's not as simple as like, it's not like I'm just not as good or but like it's more like my role in the team and essentially compromises, right? Trade-offs of this person has to have this much resources or this. Can you give us some insight into that now you're not in the team? Like, what was the conflict there? Why was Twistzz not in his best position and form?
I think it's a combination of factors. And I remember I talked to my ex-teammates recently about this, and just in a joking way, you know, like what could we have really done, you know, to make sure things stayed healthy in the team. And at the time, I think no one really found a way to progress as a team meta-wise. No one knew how to like really change our playstyle. And I think my role as a player was very obvious. I was always like, the round was set up where I was always like in the same positions, like in like apartments or Inferno. Inferno was always the easy example to give, where somehow like I'm the lurker, but I also have like a full fucking nade set. This like makes no sense, because then I'm definitely not going to see any impact this game. My only impact is going to be clicking mouse 1 on a fucking smoke grenade. And yeah, I mean, it felt bad. I mean, at the time I was also, I mean, it's crazy because sure we lifted a lot of trophies, but in my mind, now when I think about it, I was still inexperienced because I could not think of a actual solution to this problem. And looking back now, it's just, you know, no one was willing to change the way that we played the game, and I couldn't really lurk. I couldn't be like a good T-side player, it felt like, in Liquid, whereas like I felt like I was entering so much during the summer run, and I was always in situations of trade. Suddenly, like after the player break, like progressively my opportunities to trade just like depleted. Like I felt like they were always gone, and I was always in an impossible like 1v4 situation, and somehow have full nades at the same time. I don't know. I mean, I think it's hard to say, but I always just boil it down to it's a team failure, because that's teammates should always be able to help each other become better as players. And I've spent the last like year and 4 months like realizing that, you know, like no matter what, someone on the team will help you become a better player, and you can always figure out a solution together. Whereas on Liquid, I feel like there was really no solution, and no one would take that stance or the same perspective. Whereas no one would help me. Like I think it was even after Bahrain, like I was pretty just, I mean, depressed would be over dramatic, but I was pretty down, like as a person and as a player, and I simply asked the team for help. Like I don't know what I can change right now to have more impact, and no one really had an answer for me or like wanted to provide support. And that was like, I guess, pretty sad, like going into the player break like that. But I think now, with the way CS is currently, I think EliGE or NAF would be able to help me now. I guess maybe we were just all inexperienced, and it was like a new learning curve.
One thing I want to ask you about was, I don't know if you remember this is fucking years ago now. We're talking about, I think it was in 2017. It might even have been at the Mykonos event or New York or something. I remember in the early days of when you were in Liquid, I actually tried to have a convo with you where basically the gist of what I tried to convey to you was that if you're a great player in CS, it's actually not as easy as people think to find your way to other great players and have like a core and then like have all the success. So I remember telling you, this is to be fair, before NAF joined the team, I remember telling you basically, like, however you figure it out, you and EliGE have to find a way to play together for as long as you can. Because if you find another player like that, it's like, again, it might be like you're saying, maybe there's like some compromise have to happen, or if you have to have hard discussion. But if you can make it work, people can see how those are the foundations of great teams, maybe the best team you ever played. Right, I was actually shocked when I heard the story that Twistzz was going to leave Liquid. So what I want to ask was, what do you think, what maybe it ties in the last question, what happened, what went wrong? Like, essentially now, the joke is, now it feels like it's NAF and EliGE that have done that deal for some reason and decided to never be parted, and they're going to be the ones that sail off into the next part. So why wasn't it EliGE and Twistzz? Like, was there some role overlap? Why wasn't there enough space to make both people be able to stay together? Do you agree with the premise? Do you think you needed to move on at that point? What do you think?
I mean, I think 2020 was a very turbulent year. For in-game perspective and out-of-game perspective, I mean, my life was really all over the place. I think I moved like 3 times. I had some unfortunate family situations that I'm very lucky to have resolved now. And yeah, and then it doesn't help as a team. Things are happening. Players are trying to cut each other behind their backs. I lose arguably my favorite teammate of all time. Just leaves because he doesn't get along with another player on the team and goes to a different fucking game. It was pretty tough. And once again, I felt like there was no compromises from other players in the team. No one wanted to make a change. I play short now because obviously I felt like in a team with EliGE, I can't really remove him from Con on Mirage. I mean, he's a good Con player. I wanted to try playing short instead. And I was able to play short for 1 week before someone told me that they didn't like the A bomb site. And now I have to go back to playing the bomb site that I fucking have played for 3 years now, and now I don't like anymore. So it's like that type of compromise, you know? Like no one wants to take the sacrifice and try to make something work for a month. And it was the same situation where I felt like in Liquid, I was actually a good secondary opper. I mean, I thought throughout 2018, when Nitro didn't want to op, I was like a good CT opper on like a couple of maps. I think Mirage, I always like had good op stats on CT side, and I wanted to have the opportunity to try opping full time because we still didn't have an opper, especially when Nick left the team. I wanted to try like doing something other than rifling, and maybe I could have better impact. And I mean, of course, in this team, the idea gets shut down instantly, and you know, I can't. Back then, I was like pretty frustrated with how things are, but now I start to realize maybe people are just afraid of change. You know, maybe they don't want to switch something that they know is working, and not everyone has the same mindset. And obviously, when not everyone has the same mindset, then the team's not gonna succeed. And it can be frustrating at first, but now it's like I can't really be mad at the players. You know, like if they didn't want to change, then you know, I guess I have to have some respect in their stubbornness that they believe in what they're doing is gonna work, and that's just the way it is. And yeah, I mean, to summarize it, it's just we weren't willing to change and adapt or try anything new.
I want to ask a topic now, which might feel like we're opening a can of worms, but we're going to do it really carefully and not fucking step anywhere dodgy, and you can say what you want, but even so I get the feeling we're going to be more respectful than people realise. I want to talk now about the role of EliGE within Team Liquid, and the reason why I want to do this, dude, is because I actually feel responsible. I don't want people to go way too far with these fucking narratives. So people might know from years and years and years ago, even before you were in Liquid, because I knew all the players in Liquid, particularly Hiko and some of the other like management people, etc. I basically knew like all the dynamics and all the drama of the team, and so I knew back then, and famously, the problem with this is you can see how narratives get out of control. I tried explaining this narrative about EliGE actually as a way to make people not go too far with the fucking Simple narrative, where what I explained was, on the one hand, when Simple misbehaved, because he was the type of guy who just for real would just tell you straight to your face, like, you're fucking up and you're doing it wrong, I think you're an idiot, because that's so obviously obnoxious, it's really easy to go, well, you're a bad teammate, get him out the team, right? And then everyone thinks, right, that was the problem with the team. Whereas what I actually knew about this squad was that EliGE, his way of of misbehaving was the opposite. He just wouldn't say anything, or he'd just sort of like, he maybe says something mildly passive aggressive, which you're not quite sure. Like, is he trying to dig at me there, or is that just like was that just an offhand comment? And then also, he wasn't the guy who was going to go, and by the way, actually, fuck you, I want you out. He's the guy where it's more like just magically a month and a half later, it'd be like, oh, so did we all vote for this guy? What's going on? What's this? You know, it's like he just essentially he knew how to play. Like, he understands politics better. He's a smarter guy. He's also just not an obnoxious guy. But I always try to explain that's like that can be in its own way being a difficult teammate. It's certainly a challenge to face. I know if you're a coach, for example, it can be trickier actually, where you know someone doesn't like what you implemented, but he won't tell you, and you have to sort of find a way to either like engage him in convo, or like, is he really mad at it, or is he not? Like, it gets complicated. So what I want to ask was this. It feels like recently, now that loads of players have been in and out of the lineup and we're with the team we have now, it feels like fans have latched onto that narrative. And I feel like they're going too far the other way with it now, dude. That now they think like he's like the new evil simple.
He's like the puppet master of the team.
Basically, they blame everything on him for the last few years now, because he's also the last one left, you'll notice, right? I wanted to just get a sense of like what's like to be his teammate, because as far as I can tell, I'm fairly sure, by the way, he'd even actually be forthcoming in an interview. Some of these things do have like at least a grain of truth to them. Like, I put it this way, all of his coaches say he's a very set person who has his own mindset of how you're going to do it. I notice the coaches always talk like, it's not like you tell him what to do. It's like you have to sort of like convince him and get his buy-in to it. So it sounds like, now look, I will say as well, if you are the star player, you get a little bit more leeway in these regards. You do get some more say, you get more agency in where you are in the game, etc. Break some of this down for me. Where do you come in on this one? Because I know obviously, like, I'm sure you don't want a hard flame, but there's something to this, that the story of Team Liquid kind of, you don't get the context if you don't understand any of this, right?
I guess to kick the topic off, I think there was some mentality issues, but those issues actually disappeared like pretty fast. Like after 2017, I think they're the most apparent, I guess transparent in 2017 throughout the team. And I guess in 2020, he started to kind of go back into his old ways. But given our team situation, I guess anyone who has bad habits will just fall back into them when the situation is falling apart. And
yeah, sure.
I think it's fair to say. And you know, I'm still friends with EliGE now, but he can be a difficult person to work with. But you have to understand he's very smart. And he like tries to always find the most realistic view like on the game. And if he's not finding the most realistic view on the game, it's because he's frustrated. And once he's no longer frustrated, he's usually a pretty good person to work with, and he's a very good player. So I think for me, I never had issues like working with him. I basically spent a lot of time with EliGE. I lived in an apartment with him in Los Angeles. And during the beginning of 2017, I pretty much roomed with him at like every event. So I got to get closer to him more than anyone else on the team at the time. And yeah, I mean, in 2017 there was rumors about him being removed, and
not just rumors, but yeah, true. Officially, they're rumors.
I mean, they were pretty like public, but I was one of the people that didn't want him removed.
Right.
I felt like there was, you know, we didn't even try a psychologist at that point. You know, like that's where the scene was at. You didn't even want to try helping a player using a psychologist. And I just believed if we gave EliGE the proper help, that he would become a way better person and player. And then we got a really good psychologist named Jared Tendler, and we started using him more and more as a team. And I think EliGE started using him more and more individually. And that's when it wasn't like an instant fix, but over time we constantly saw progression. And I think it was good reinsurance that, you know, this player is going to become good to play with. And yeah, I mean, I don't think he was the issue in the team. He's a hard person to play with sometimes. You're never gonna get him out of his spots unless he wants to try something new, and that's okay. You know, as long as you can figure out a way to play a situation with him in this position, then I think you're fine to continue forward. But there was definitely other issues in the team, and there's a reason, you know, that EliGE is still there. You know, if there was actually an issue with EliGE, I actually don't think he would be there. I think Team Liquid would have made a different approach. I don't think Nitro would have came back to play with him if there was actually something wrong. So I think the public needs to see that.
You'll notice I was very key at the end there to point out, like, as I always do, like, there is like sort of a give and take depending on how good the player is and how key he is to your team. Right. One thing I would say on the last point you said there, that he might be stubborn in terms of what spots he plays. It is understandable though, because he's like a phenomenally consistent player. Like, at the end of the day, his spots, he is really good at them. He clearly knows the inside outs of it. What did you actually think of his skill set? Because one of the reasons why I said that thing earlier wasn't just about status as great players. I also thought at the time when there was no NAF, in theory, you guys definitely could have worked out a no overlap system. Like, the skill sets are so different. You're good at different things, different areas of the game, different parts of the game. Like, I always thought these two should blend really well, Twistzz and EliGE.
I don't think there's ever like a role overlap. I never felt like there was a skill set overlap or a position overlap. I played almost every area on every map with EliGE, and I feel like we're pretty good site buddies. Even on T side, I took map control with him all the time, and I was okay with being that like kind of like supportive element. You know, like I'll flash for him here, he's gonna get the opening. I knew my role in the team. You know, at some point I'm gonna trade EliGE, and I was okay with that. You know, like I know he's gonna get his opening, maybe a double entry. If he gets a fucking quad entry, then I'm happy for him. You know, I don't have to do anything, and he's just on a tear. So I understood my role in the team. I just think down the line, like mid 2019, or I guess at the end of 2019, that's where like I didn't really understand my role in the team anymore. But before that, 2018, 2017 and stuff, I really it was very easy to play with him from my perspective.
I saw that in the interview you did with, it was just Sadikist for the one you did on Desertor, that you actually said that, because this was an interesting detail, it's like, it wasn't just that like you wanted karrigan to come a FaZe. When karrigan was still in mouse spots, you were even considering for real joining mouse spots to play with karrigan. And by the way, I will say, if people don't know, because I've often told the story years and years back, mouse spots used to be an org that didn't pay as much. To be fair, at this point in time, they could in theory have paid like a very good European salary, like a 25k type salary. Like, how much of that is like you had the idea, or how much like if karrigan had said like I'm still in mouse for the rest of the year, well, if they hadn't have moved to FaZe, would you for real have joined mouse, do you think? Was that like on the table? Because obviously I will say we have to shade in, there's this element where you wanted to live in Europe understandably for your relationship, or your girlfriend lives in Germany, etc. So was it like was it among European teams, and like it was like, was it mouse FaZe? Was there more people on the table? I
think the initial point that I wanted to live in Europe because of my girlfriend, I think that narrative is very skewed. I think if there was still a good North American team that I knew I would get along with,
right? Okay, so that wasn't like a rule you had. You would have potentially gone to an EG if they'd been good or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. But I think NA was doing so bad, and I mean, I guess on Liquid we were still. I mean, we made final of the last event of the year.
Still pretty decent, yeah.
Yeah, I just didn't get along with like the team anymore. The only player I got along with was EliGE pretty much. And fuck, what was I gonna say? Yeah, I mean, going into 2021, I felt like during the whole COVID era, the only way you're gonna be competitive and you're gonna be number one is if you spend the whole time in Europe, because there's no good practices in North America anymore. You're not gonna find like meta-changing things in NA. No one's gonna be innovative. Whereas in EU, like people are progressing like so fast. There's always meta changes. There's new defaults like on every map all the time, where you know the scene is just playing it like a different way. And not only that, but the players are just better. Like, what if you're a player and you're playing against good players all the time, you're gonna progress. Like, unless you intentionally set yourself back and you don't know what to look for, you're gonna progress as a player. And at the end of 2020, I proposed a roster change, and I proposed an entire team move to Europe. And I felt I told the management and the coach that I was like, I don't think we're gonna be number one ever again if we don't live in Europe as a team. And they're like, that's not happening, and I was like, I'm out. And then I was very fortunate enough to have first of all, Rain like instantly reached out to me pretty much like after my interview that I said I was leaving Team Liquid. So he was the first person that contacted me for FaZe. And then in my mind, I still wanted to see what was like maybe like on the horizon, you know. And my priority was a good IGL. Like I want to play with someone that actually like really knows like what to look for and how to set up their pieces. And my first thought was karrigan. So I looked at Mousesports, but then I quickly heard rumors that he was leaving Mousesports. So I was like, okay, that doesn't make sense if I go to Mousesports. That's a terrible move for me then. And I just tried finding more information about where karrigan was going, and I saw that he was linked to FaZe. And that was kind of it, you know? Like the only other international team in my mind that might have made sense was maybe Complexity. And then quickly saw that, I mean, the only player in that team that I really wanted to play with was JKS, actually. And they just bought him, and I knew he was expensive, so there's no way that the org was probably going to buy another, like, expensive player. And I was like, okay. So I was happy to have FaZe as, like, my priority, and happy to know that karrigan was going there. And then, in the back of my mind, I understood that, karrigan going there is going to bring ropz, like, eventually, Like, these two players have a good connection, and, with the turbulent roster, I kind of knew that. I mean, it's funny because from when I first played with them, I already knew olof was important to the team. And when olof stepped out of the team and got replaced by karrigan, sure, karrigan's a great leader and a good player, but I still felt like there was something missing. And I think that's why when olof came back and replaced coldzera, that's when things started clicking, like, in the team again, and we had, like, some, like, decent, better results. I mean, we didn't get close to winning anything, but it was still better than what we had before. So, yeah, I mean, karrigan's. I mean, I know you're a karrigan fan. I think the community truly doesn't appreciate, like, his status as an in-game leader. It's by far, like, from my experiences, he's by far the best in-game leader in the game.
Yeah, if people don't know, I actually think the real problem he has is just that, like, Nico has implied he didn't think he was good, and obviously he got kicked. So the problem is Nico obviously has a massive reputation. I don't think they realise everyone else I know who's a former teammate of karrigan, at least privately, they all rave about the guy. I think he's fucking mega. Even the ones in Astralis think he was really good, of course. So it's just fans, bizarrely, I'm always out on him when he's on his like a bad half of a year or some shit like that, But there's another thing, mate. If you're an in-game leader, like, it's not like being a star player. Like, it's more, the stuff in your brain doesn't disappear like form can, and like your skills, like,
yeah,
that just stays, doesn't it? So it's more like if you get in the right headspace again, you're going to be good. Why wouldn't you? It makes sense. I think that's cool though, because the interesting thing about that detail is obviously people might have speculated you did the European move for your girlfriend, like you said earlier. But actually, that's actually quite rare, believe it or not, that people think about their career the way you're talking about. Usually, people just try to join a team that's good now, or they have like a certain teammate they want to play with. I want to play with this guy here. But actually, that's a pretty shrewd way if you want to get back to the top again. It's like, essentially, if you've just been in a team where you weren't used correctly, you didn't feel like you were in the right spots, and you didn't get like the proper resources, go to a team where the IGL's famous for like making the best out of people, putting them into the correct position. Like, it makes perfect sense to me. The problem is though, right, if you remember the timeline, even though again, kind of like we all knew ropz was eventually joining FaZe, there was that massive lag where we knew that karrigan was going to FaZe, but he hadn't officially joined FaZe yet. There was those months, right? So this is what I want to ask is, before that though, the reason why the move wasn't as sexy when it finally came off is because everyone also was hyped because you were joining a team with coldzera, and everyone thought, wow, this is another chance to have like a really skilled lineup. What do you think went wrong with the coldzera period of FaZe? Because on paper, again, that looked like, wow, if everyone gets back in a good form, this could be really dangerous, right? This could be a major winner right here. So what happened to that guy, do you think? Or what was it about the team dynamic? Because something happened with his play, right?
I think honestly, I think it's super weird, because if you saw his like interviews, I guess more recently in 2021, he said he didn't have the roles that he wanted to play like in FaZe, but either he just never said anything to us, or just straight up lied. Because I think karrigan gave him like all the roles that he wanted, and he never said anything. And he said he was happy what he was doing, and then he was very comfortable in game. So it's shocking to hear that he wants like entry or whatever. Personally, as a player that I learned a lot from and watched and reviewed, and I played pretty much all the same positions at him, especially when he was in this era of being like the best, I was excited to play with him. I mean, I was able to have a period where I played with olof and coldzera on the same team, and I thought that was super cool for me. I was like, damn, these guys, both players that I appreciate and have watched and learned a lot from, and now I get to play alongside them for my first time here. And then I guess with olof was past my expectations, and coldzera kind of, I don't want to say a disappointment, but he was not the player that I thought he would be to work with. And there's really no like flame or anything. I just don't think he was happy on the team, and I think he had a different perspective, or maybe he was homesick. It's one of them, but he definitely wasn't happy on the team, and I mean that's why he left.
When you actually came to this lineup after coldzera, so obviously olof came back in the team, right? What actually is the vibe in FaZe at that time? Because if you remember, right, fans never know, because to be fair, the FaZe org, like, the one thing they haven't done a great job with, unfortunately, is they don't seem to do a lot of PR around the CS team. It seems like stuff just happens in the CS team, and you're like, all right, did they remember they have a CS team? Like, you don't know, so they never tend to try and like, they don't really try and put out fires or rumors. They don't really tend to address stuff. So everyone's never really known outside the team. Like, when Olof comes back in these teams, is it really that like he comes back and it's like, oh, can you just play for the next month while we find a player? Or is it really like you're like a real member now and then we'll just see what happens? Because it almost felt like he was just like the stand-in, but then like for like what, like half a year or something, like his ages. So what was this? What was it like for internally? Was he supposed to be there the whole time? Were you supposed to be bringing someone in? Was ropz supposed to be joining earlier? What was going on?
Well, I think maybe the management had a different perspective, but I think as a team, at first when they brought Olof back, I think it was actually on more of a long-term basis.
Oh,
like
okay.
there was a plan, to have Olof for a while, and maybe karrigan's plan was just to have Olof until ropz was available, But I think at first, when we had like a good result at Cologne and like we still had like okay results after for like the first 2 or 3 months that he was back, I think there was. I think that he was like, it felt like he was there for a long time, It didn't feel like he was just there to be there and to fill a void. I think he was there to try to do his best and win, and we had, I think, higher expectations than we did before as a team.
Was there a vibe, like you said, like if people don't know, the weird thing about that ropz move is I've almost never seen a move like this before, dude. Where as far as I know, all parties wanted the move to happen. It was just about them agreeing on the exact amount and signing the contract. Like ropz wanted to join FaZe and play with karrigan and them. karrigan wanted ropz to join. Like yeah, Mouse wants to sell him for loads of money. As far as I can tell, that move was always going to happen. The only outside chance, by the way, was if some weirdos like G2 just came in and gave like more money or something. Aside from that, as far as I could tell, this deal was always going to happen. It's just that it felt like it took forever. That saga lasted like another like 6-8 months while we were waiting for will it ever happen. So was it actually plausible he would have joined earlier, or was this always the time period, the window when it was going to happen, do you think?
I think it was too difficult, given that when a player has more time left in their contract, they become more expensive, and it's also trying to like figure out what's best as a player. So I think what ropz has said in like his recent interviews, that he thinks even though he wanted to leave Mouse, staying there and trying to do his best gave him motivation to keep going. So it could have been an individual thing, but I think to make the move happen earlier, it would have been way too difficult for all parties. I mean, ropz is an amazing player, but I don't think FaZe wants to try to buy like someone for. I don't even know what his buyout would have been like at the time if we tried buying it.
Sounds like $1 million or something big, yeah.
Probably something like crazy. And also the major and the RMR rules, like you really get punished if you make player changes, even the ESL ranking. Like players carry like a lot of points on their own, so it impacts everything when you make a roster move. And I think it only happened around, I guess. IEM winter, or before that, I started to speculate if our team would be making like roster changes going into the player break, and then that's like when things started to like come together and there was more clarity like in the team, and then Olof was very understanding and he knew, and he was very happy to play with us for the time he did, and we were all happy and have him as a teammate, and he did everything he could for us. But yeah, I don't think it would have been impossible to make this move happen any faster than it did. I mean, we were lucky to even have him before the player break ended.
Yeah, true. If people don't remember, when karrigan first joined the team, and I'm on about the period when he joined and then coldzera had just been phased out and Olof came in, right? Initially, if people don't remember, the results actually were mad ropey. It reminded me actually of that Cloud9 fucking cursed project, because it's like every series would be like 16-14, overtime, 2-map, 3-map, but you were always losing them. It was like you were always like just that far off, and so obviously, the rep was going to be, well, look at these players, look, these are all land-proven players. So in some ways, I think Cologne actually like saved the narrative of FaZe, because that tournament in Cologne was almost like the most, if anyone really was a karrigan hater, you must hate that tournament right there, because that was the one where you had that Gambit team that everyone saw online was just the best team. They were fucking insane. And in that tournament, like that was just like the value of having a really good in-game leader, mate. Like that was a fucking masterpiece, that quarterfinals game he called. Like he was toying with these guys. You could just see like there's a different, because the part I think a fan always misunderstands is it's why now, you notice we don't even just talk about LAN. It's like it has to be LAN with a crowd as well. Because it's that thing of when you're on a stage with the crowd and then you only have the limited timeouts, you're going to get your comms really. Like, it's really tricky to call a good game like that. I don't think fans understand. It's a lot harder than it is just calling a random online game, right? What did you think about this tournament where you had this deep run? Because, like, this was where FaZe was back in the mix to potentially even win.
Yeah, I think we're just all happy and super motivated to play on LAN again, and this team is just, I mean, that roster even was full of super good LAN players. I mean, even Brokey, like he doesn't have like a lot of experience from his past LANs on FaZe. He did perform well for the team in the Nico and coldzera like era. So yeah, I mean, I think it was just a combination, you know, of like you have me, Rain, and Olof, and then karrigan is obviously has been missing LANs for a year and a half now, and to finally have one back, I think he was just ready to destroy some teams. And I think how the bracket was being laid out was just like the perfect run for us. I mean, the lower bracket run was insane after we lost to Astralis in the opening match.
Right, one thing I wanted to get into a little bit here is, like, we'll obviously talk about the totality of what it means to win Katowice and all that jazz, but I have a very specific question to ask you, because I feel like fans have missed this dude, right? Even when people talk about, like, they won the LAN with a stand-in, it's like, it's worse than that, guys. They won a LAN with a stand-in, where the stand-in had to replace 2 different players who play totally different styles and spots, and they didn't even just do that. Like, it's not they just told JKS, you are Rain today, you are ropz. As far as I can tell from all the interviews and the things I've been piecing together, wasn't it actually like people like you and ropz actually were the ones who essentially, like, on certain maps changed to CT spot or swapped up what you were doing on T set? What didn't you guys, depending on what was happening, sort of like accommodate and make space for these guys? Because I was wondering, did you think that, like, all the different roles you've played, it feels like they've come into effect now in FaZe. You've been able to be used in these different ways, and it feels like you're a different player. Like, sometimes I see you entry, and obviously you have the aim to be an entry anytime you want. Sometimes you're the clutch player. You seem to end up in a lot of 1vx now, which seems like you got very comfortable in that. Like, how were you used at this time, and what do you think Twistzz, what type of player is he supposed to be in FaZe, do you think?
Of course. I mean, your perspective on the situation's right. I mean, luckily this team is full of people that are willing to sacrifice for the overall picture, and it was very fast for ropz and myself to say, like, oh yeah, we'll move. You know, we'll make it happen. Whatever fits this team better, and we'll make the calling style better and our team chemistry. We'll make it happen, and it's, you know, I don't have to worry about it. And I mean,
that must be pretty cool in light of what you said about the liquid problems years earlier. It sounds like the opposite mentality, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was, in that situation, the whole environment was so good. Everything was like a breath of fresh air, and, you know, no matter where someone was playing on the map, I mean, they're just happy to play, like, with each other. And when you have so much good teamwork and everyone's working so well together, I truly, like, it doesn't matter if I'm like an upper B, like, Mirage player, if my teammates like constantly wanting to play together or do something with me, where I see the team moving around so much and making good reactions, then it's just a pleasure to see great CS and to be part of it. So, I mean, luckily for us, the positions that were being changed was like almost the perfect situation, you know? Like, we replaced ropz with like a person was once a top 20 player 2 years in a row, lurking and, you know, kind of carrying this team, 100 Thieves. And then he comes in here, he hasn't played for like 3 months, but, you know, still very confident in his abilities. And you even heard like JKS himself say that replacing ropz, he actually felt like there was more pressure because he was replacing like a really good lurker, you know,
Sure.
like a really good player. Whereas when he replaced Rain, it kind of felt like he had no pressure anymore. He just, you know, it's something completely new, and he's just gonna give it his best shot. And for us, for ropz and myself, we're just fine, you know. Like, Rain's missing. Okay, ropz will play like a side overpass because like me and JKS actually had good like team chemistry for the short period that he had on the B sides. Or it's like Rain's playing outside, but prior to like half of 2021, I was actually the outside player on both sides, on T and CT side. So I understand like the meta, and it's a easy role for me to fill. Whereas like JKS was playing like I guess A side for complexity. So we're quick to find like the solutions as a team and whatever made the most sense, and that combined with good environment and chemistry, I think led to us winning. There's no way we win that event if people aren't willing to compromise.
What about that part about, like, why have you become like the new fucking Clutchmeister or something? It seems you just seem to end up in these scenarios all the time now.
I think it's just a mixture of karrigan's calling and how my playstyle is now. I mean, I feel like maybe the numbers don't say the most, but I feel like in an era where the game is the most competitive it's ever been, I also feel like I'm the best player I've ever been, and I feel like I'm much more dynamic. I secondary call like a lot more now, and wherever karrigan's dead, I instantly try to come up with a plan. I'm able to micromanage, so I feel individually, I'm the best I've ever been. And when I end up in these situations, because like now I'm really like reading the game, and I'm trying to coordinate things constantly with my teammates. Or if I'm like lurking somewhere, I really understand my role, and I know like when this thing happens or when something happens on the other side of the map at this exact time, I have to take my duel, or like the round doesn't make sense anymore. And yeah, I mean that's also just thanks to karrigan. Like he's kind of just brought this like motivation and confidence back to me as a player. And I mean, we won like a lot on Team Liquid like in the past, but as a player, I think I've never worked harder than I have the past year and a half.
I thought it was interesting, actually, when I found out that it was you that wanted to bring JKS in, because a funny thing happened before this tournament, right, which was when people heard that story, because obviously it was days before that we knew that ropz tested positive and might not be able to play. Well, I did a talk show where I just, everyone was naming names of who they should have, and I just threw in there, like, what about JKS or whatever? And so people think I just had, like, advanced knowledge or whatever, but I didn't. The funny thing is, to me, I actually just find it baffling other people didn't guess to, because if you go along my view of how you model the game and what the different roles are, it's the most obvious person. He's literally sat there. He's played all fucking lurker his whole career. By the way, he's just been misused in a team, and he's literally sat just waiting, willing to play for any team. To me, it was the most obvious. Like, it's the closest to a one-to-one you were going to get in that scenario. So I'm amazed more people kind of didn't see how obvious that one was. Does this imply, I mean, it sounds like it from what you're saying, like you're thinking more about like team structures and bigger ideals of the game than just the crosshair now, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, when you're practicing with a player that plays all these spots and then you lose him now, and no one else on the team actually wants to fill those spots because we're not really any lurkers anymore. I mean, I lurk, but I'm on completely opposite sides of the map, and it's different timings, different situations, so it doesn't make sense for me to swap my roles. And I mean, yeah, JK's just sitting there, and the only reason people wouldn't be confident is because he hasn't played the game in 3 months. And once I was able to remove those doubts from my teammates' minds, I think it was a very easy and great pickup for us for the event. And yeah, I mean, that only happens when you look at the game a specific way.
So obviously a few years back in Liquid, you did get the Cologne win, you got the Grand Slam. Even with no weird storyline and epic in and out standings, winning Katowice in itself is obviously a massive career milestone for people. It's up there. Look, it's not a major, but it's right below that. It's the, like I say, with Cologne, Katowice, these are the big events that people want to win in their career at some point and have on the resume, right? Just as an accomplishment, this must be significant for you, especially after Liquid. You know, people might wonder if you leave a team like Liquid, maybe you never get to those heights again. Maybe you're just, you know, in a good team like FaZe was last year, for example. What does it mean to win a tournament like Katowice?
Honestly, if I had to rank this win, I almost put it as high as the Grand Slam win because of the circumstances that we had to face and what we had to do as a team to actually make it happen, and the countless hours of work that, you know, every player actually had to put in to be part of the victory. Makes it also much more special. And I don't think even after the Cologne win, I don't think I was that emotional. Like, this was a great win because you also have that feeling as a player, you know? When you win a tournament like this, you instantly think, like, it's been 3 years since
there you go.
I've experienced this feeling. And then once you feel it again, it's just something reignites again, like, in your body. And, you know, you start to realize those, like, 14-hour, like, 16-hour days where you're just playing and you sacrifice everything else to make the team better, to make yourself better. It's all worth it. It just happens, like, eventually, especially if you deserve it. And I mean, I would say, I mean, I said in the interview after that I still thought the Grand Slam win was better, and that's only because of the prestige that it holds. Yeah. But as an actual tournament win, this one has to be the best one in my career.
Yeah, I mean, in line with what you're saying as well, by the way, that's a very famous thing that sports stars say. I notice is like when you're young, it's too easy to think like, oh, I'll be back in like the NBA finals. Like, we'll win the next one of it. It's like, it's only when you've been like 10 years in your career, you realize like, mate, you don't get that many chances at these things. Like when you have like a window or you have a team or you have the moment that you can do it, you have to seize these because as you say, you can go years of barren spells or even worse. Like I said about the post-Starladder Berlin pit, the worst is when you're second or third, but you just never win. And it's like, fuck, I'm right there. In some ways, I'd rather be eighth if I'm not going to be fucking first,
Yeah, that's exactly the way it is, and I think at that moment, like, I realized I would never take for granted like the opportunities that were given, and I think for every player on the team, it was the same because karrigan and ropz haven't won something that big either since 2019, so it was the same feeling for them, and I think that's what made the feeling more special. It was like everyone shared the same passion and the same emotional, I guess, impact when we finally completed the victory.
Here's the thing, mate. I would have said, in line with that earlier conversation about EliGE, like the other thing is, if you get a player like EliGE, like you got to hold on to him because you're not just going to find another player like that. But the joke is, you basically have because you got fucking ropz now. So, right, are we just updating the storyline? It's now ropz and Twistzz for the next 3 years with the dynasty, and like you've got to stay together. This guy's a mega player. Give me some thoughts on him.
I mean, he's just probably mechanically the best player I've ever played with, and the way he looks at the game and picks his timings, picks his duels. It's very special. It's very unique, and I don't think you can really appreciate it unless you're watching it all the time, like in practice and seeing how it happens. Because it's crazy. Like obviously, I knew that he was insane, like player. Like without a doubt, when Mouse Sports wasn't having results, I still thought he was a top 5 rifler.
Oh, he was mega, yeah,
without a doubt. And just to play with him all the time and see how he looks at it, it's a pleasure again to have a teammate that I can learn from, that I can watch and I can take away things from his game and now apply to mine. And I mean, yeah, I think not only the duo, I think this trio of myself, Broken, and ropz can stay together for, I mean, honestly, if I would have to say I would like it for the rest of my career, just because I think we have something great.
You're young enough. Yeah, it's not like it's impossible. As long as the contracts work out, it could happen.
Yeah, exactly. And honestly, I think ropz and myself have like such a good view at the game. Like even if something did happen and karrigan did retire, I still think there's enough brain power in the team to make something happen just between me and him. And Brokey is like constantly evolving as a player, so I think this trio has very good longevity to it.
When Simple and Na'Vi won the last major, I actually realised when the major came along, like, fuck, people have over-focused on this major narrative, actually, because they made it sound like Simple had never won anything and that he was just a guy who just fragged out. Right? I even told people, are we even keeping track? He's already won Cologne Land twice, Katowice, like he'd already won the Grand Slam at this point. It's like, mate, all he hasn't won is the major. I feel like you're in a similar category now. Like, I don't think people notice. Like, you've now won the fucking Katowice, you've won Cologne Pass, you've won a Grand Slam. Basically, it has to be the major now, right? The major is the big thing. And by the way, you're in the perfect team. Because spoiler, that's what ropz and fucking karrigan are thinking for sure. So that has to be the career focus now, right? It has to be to win the major.
Of course. Agree? That's like definitely career focus is to win the major. It's getting really dark in my fucking room. But it's always, that's been like a big goal for a while now. Once you win the Grand Slam, you instantly try to shift goals, and if you don't want a second Grand Slam, you're going to have to get the major first, and then you can focus on the second Grand Slam. But now I'm in the team where, both things are possibilities again. Win the major. I mean, this is by far, I mean, on paper, I would say the most mechanically skilled lineup right now. And just like between the work that we're putting in and our practice, I think we're on the right track to having good results. And, yeah, I mean, not only the major, but I want to, I mean, in a humble way, I want to be the best NA player of all time. And it's because, like, I don't think people realize the sacrifice that my move really took, Like, I still have an apartment in Vancouver that I pay for. I still have an apartment there, I left pretty much everything. I mean, obviously I moved some of my stuff to Europe, but I left a lot of things like back home to pursue and become number one. And I'm just looking ahead, of the goals. If it's not the
No,
major, then
dude, I
like,
think we should emphasize this point, because actually there's an area I don't think you get enough credit. Is, remember, not only do the other NA players complain about even having to go to Europe for these extended periods of time, but there's very few of them ever were willing to even consider moving to a European team for exactly this reason. They don't want to leave their family, their friends behind. I always say in CS, actually, we're a very unique esport, that the best players in the world typically live at home. They still have all their family surrounding around them. You know, in this scenario, basically, as long as you're committed to FaZe Clan, unless FaZe Clan somehow becomes an NA team, you're going to be in Europe. Like, this is kind of like a quest, right? You're on a journey.
yeah, of course. As long as this trio like stays together forever, then I'm in Europe as long as this trio stands. And yeah, I mean that's just the goal. That's just like what I want in life. Counter-Strike has given me so much already, to like, give me the ability to support my family, and I don't have to be in person to support my family. I can support my family from afar, and I think my mom and dad always realize that every day. So as long as they see that, I'm happy enough to be over here, like doing my own thing, and really fighting for something.
In line with what you said, where you want to be the greatest NA player ever, I have a question then, which, look, fans normally would say, like, if you're a pro, you're supposed to just be humble and go, no, of course not, everyone else is really good. But, mate, I always say this, right? If I ever look at a player and just raw mechanics, they're among the absolute best. Great example would be Config now in Astralis, right? In my opinion, it isn't good enough to actually just be a good player, because look at the fucking raw skill set you're starting with. So my question to you is this. Could Twistzz be the best player in CS? Could you be the best player in CSGO in the world?
Like, could I become the best player right now? I think with enough effort and work, and
is there anything you've ever envisioned or thought about?
Yeah, of course. That's what I remember. I got frustrated. I had to argue with my girlfriend because she didn't realize that my goal was to become the best player in the world. And I got mad, and I was like, yeah, if I'm not trying to become the best player, then what the fuck am I doing? Like, actually, like, what am I really doing in a sport if I'm not trying to become the best? And the goal's still the same, like, maybe I have a long way to go in a era that's pretty much dominated by oppers, but I think seeing Nico has given me enough inspiration, and I know it can be done, and I just have to find more consistency, and I still have a lot to learn, but I think I'm on a good trajectory as a player to make that goal happen.
At the end of this interview, do you have a final message or anyone you thank or shout out?
Not really. Probably just the FaZe fans that have been supporting for a while now, or supported the past iterations of this roster. I know how insane it probably was to win this FaZe, finally lift another trophy, and all that tough years of trying to be a fan. I'm happy that you finally have a team that you can get behind and support, and one that's a champion contender. So thank you.
This video was kindly supported by Ahmed Hadjou, Matt Pugnatio Rajcula, Travis Goff, Adam Ochs, Animosity, Bot Pounder 420, Hades, Jensen Gore, Joseph Ginsberg, Kovacevic, Tobias Bernasconi, Dulken, William Peyton Lacey, Zumba, Zyrathenia, and as always, special thanks goes out to Jerky's Minion. Do you want to suggest a topic or a guest for my content? Want to ask me a question in my monthly AMA? Do you want teasers? Find out who the upcoming guests are? Maybe you want to take part in a lengthy donator discussion with me? Well, if so, put your money where your mouth is and join the Skilluminati today, where? Via the Patreon link in the description box.